Hello, everyone, and welcome to She Said, She Said, and to 2021's very first hashtag Eye Candy Show. What's the hashtag Eye Candy Show, you ask? Well, it's a podcast in which we celebrate and honor Internet movers and shakers who are ideal. They are incredible men and women, people who are interesting, innovative, and iconic, hence eye candy. I'm Lena Stagg, your co-host on She Said, She Said, and I'm the author of the Recipe Records series of rock and roll cookbooks full of good food, good fun, and great rock and roll stories, rock facts, and trivia. And you also get some incredible song lists to enjoy as you prepare each delicious, easy-to-make recipe. I like to think of the books as a fun Saturday night enclosed in a paper book. It's a fun way to enjoy music, enjoy food, and enjoy each other. So check out the Recipe Records series on lenastagg.com, and while you're there, follow the link to my latest rock blog, which is www.rockblocks3.blogspot.com. It's hot off the press and has great recipes from my book. It's all waiting for you at lenastagg.com.
Hey guys, I'm Jude Sutherland Kessler, author of the John Lennon series, Lena's trusty sidekick. The John Lennon series, in case you haven't had a chance to check it out, is a highly researched, documented narrative history detailing the life of John. And of course, if you're going to talk about John, you have to include his mates, the Beatles. It's going to be a 9-volume series that follows John's life really almost day by day. Volumes 1 through 3 are sold out in physical form, but you can still get them on any ebook format. And Volume 4, Should Have Known Better, which is the fast-paced story of the Beatles in 1964, is also on ebook, but I do have a few physical copies of those left for those of you who are book collectors. You can go to johnlennonseries.com and you can read sample chapters from each one of the books and check it out. And while you're there, just as Lena suggested, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is about bi-monthly, really. And we'll keep you posted on what's going on as we get closer and closer to the release of Volume 5, which will be out in August of 2022. That's just like 16, 18 months away. We are so close. But the big news of today, and I totally have butterflies because this is a really, really special guest that we have. He is one of the best, right, Lena?
Absolutely. Absolutely. He is an accomplished bass player who in the early 1970s was rocking the scene in New York City with an edgy, politically involved, rough and ready bar band called Elephant's Memory. And this extremely popular group, including lead guitarist Tex Gabriel and organist Adam Ippolito and saxophonist Stan Bronstein, along with our very gifted guest today, came to the attention of John Lennon and Yoko Ono. That is right. The reputation of Elephant's Memory Band was so outstanding that John Lennon reached out to them and asked them if they'd be interested in sitting down and talking with him about a new project that he had in mind.
Can you imagine that you are so proficient and good and talented in what you do that John Lennon reaches out to you? I love that. I so love that.
That's crazy.
John was on the eve of creating what is my very favorite Lennon solo LP sometime in New York City. And I love it because, look, I'm very politically minded, and this album stood up very courageously for the rights of men, women, and children across the globe. And it was an album that wasn't afraid to speak out boldly for issues such as women's rights and prison reform and the independence of Ireland from Great Britain. But to make this album as commanding as John and Yoko wanted it to be, they knew that they needed a strong, powerful backing band who would create the kind of musical impact that John's lyrics were going to have. And that band was Elephant's Memory. And their bass player, who's with us today, is none other than the extremely kind, very affable, off-the-charts talented Mr. Gary Van Scyoc. We are, as they used to say on Saturday Night Live back in the 70s, we are verklempt. We are over the moon to have Gary with us. So, Gary, welcome to She Said, She Said.
Oh, I'm so glad to be with you folks tonight. It's an honor here with two accomplished writers like yourselves. It's really a pleasure. Looking forward to it. I'm
We're
sure
very
you have some
excited.
questions for me.
We do. We do. Both of us do. Lena is really a music expert. You know, I'm just the John girl, but she is really a music person, so I know she can't wait. But I'm going to jump in, and then we'll let her ask you some questions as well. But, you know, Gary, about a week ago, you and I sat down to chat for a piece that I'm writing about you for Culture Sonar magazine next month. And that interview was so great. Well, you said so many wonderful things that I thought we've got to let people listen to you talk instead of just read that short article. So we wanted to hear the story from you personally of your days with John Lennon. So if you're ready to roll, we're ready to roll.
Oh, we're ready.
Okay.
Where shall I start?
Well, let's start first and foremost with the great true tale. You know, they say that history is stranger than fiction. Well, it's also more wonderful than fiction. So tell us the true story of how you came to work with the Lennons and how the Plastic Ono Elephant's Memory Band was formed.
All right. Well, we'll start like around 1968 when I was a studio musician in New York, as all of the Elephants really did that during the day. A lot of people, you know, refer to us as a street band, but we all made our living doing TV and radio jingles during the day, most of us. And so in 68, I started hearing about the Elephants Memory Band doing political benefits at NYU, and they were playing outside at the Washington Square Park, and and the Village Voice just covered all of that stuff back in that day so well. And that was my main rag in those days, because I would get gigs from it, like week-long engagements and, and the personal ads and in the back. They had a lot of musician stuff going on. A lot of people getting gigs in the Village Voice. So I was really tuned in on Elephants and quite taken with their political stance, as a lot of people were really getting into that at that time. So lo and behold, I didn't realize, I kept looking into the band, and they had done the soundtrack to Midnight Cowboy, the Dustin Hoffman movie, and had a gold record for that, and had a hit single on their own on Mitra Media Records called Mongoose. It was like top 40 in Cashbox and Billboard. So I knew the band was about to make some noise. So one day I saw an ad in The Voice, and lo and behold, it was the Elephants were actually looking for a bass player, and they had what they call a cattle call, where they basically say, anybody in New York that's around, come on down. So I showed up for that cattle call audition, and I think there were over 60 bass players there. But later I found out that they kind of had been scouting me anyway, so I kind of got shoved up to the last top 6 or whatever, just based on my credentials as a studio musician in New York, and I had been on Columbia Records in a band called Pig Iron, so they knew who I was. New York was a lot smaller town back then, especially with musicians. And so I got the audition with Elephants and started doing a lot of those political type things, and it came December of 71, and we did a live radio broadcast out on Long Island at a station called WLIR, and it's where you go in and you would play like a set, half-hour set on cassette, and they would give you a cassette copy to take home, and somehow that cassette got into one of our political buddies, Jerry Rubin's hands. And he had been hanging out with John. And I didn't really know it at the time, but So Jerry Rubin, the political activist, one of the Chicago Seven, is responsible for getting that demo tape of Elephants to John and Yoko, and they heard the tape. They loved it. They thought we had a lot of soul. Apparently, Jerry told us, and we had just the right ingredients. As Lena has this, her candy and her cake recipes and all of the stuff from the '60s, which I'm anxious to try. By the way, '60s food is my thing. But I get off track here. There, sorry. Anyway, we decided to meet with John because of Jerry Rubin's connection. And one night we were rehearsing in a studio called Magna Graphics on Bedford Street in the Village. And our roadies came in and said, John and Yoko are outside. They want to come in and talk and maybe play.
Oh, my gosh.
We thought they were kidding. I had seen John around the neighborhood, previous to that a couple of times. They were had just made the move over to Bank Street, which is really just a jump from where we were rehearsing, just around the corner, literally. And so I would see him at the Korean Deli once in a while, but I just never had the kahunas to go over and, introduce myself as a member of Elephant's Memory. I kind of thought he knew who we were, but I didn't want to take it for granted. So anyway, back to the studio, he comes in. After we kept him waiting for an hour, he comes in that white suit from Abbey Road, and my jaw just dropped.
Wow.
It was just, is this happening? Oh, my God.
Wow.
So it was, even though we kind of had a little bit of an inkling that it could happen, when it happened, it was just, it was off the charts. So he loved it. We had an extra guitar. He wanted to play. He hadn't played in probably months and months and months, and we didn't know whether he was going to be able to keep up. But after about an hour, he got those old Beatle chops back, and he was definitely keeping up with us, and we were rocking.
Oh,
so
my
we
God.
played for all the old stuff, like we played Dizziness Lizzie and all the Chuck Berry tunes, and we were just having a ball. Our fingers were getting tired, so I think it was about 4 or 5 in the morning. When John pipes up and says, I'd like to join your band. We just looked at each other and said, it was just, you just couldn't believe what you were hearing, And we didn't want to, laugh in his face or anything, but, we just were kind of going, how in the heck is this going to happen? So anyway, after hashing it around for about another half hour or so, and we got down to reality, and Yoko said, why don't we do a merger? And she had already come up with the Plastic Ono, P-O-E-M, Elephant's Memory. Hey, that spells poem. And she was just really into it. You know how Yoko is. She's all with the numerology stuff, and she figured out that John and I were both number 9s, and she was going on and on. But so we had to take it seriously. We were kind of in a situation where we had to tell John, we're really tied down with this Metro Media Records right now. We're trying to get out of our contract. And he just looked at us and says, don't worry about it.
Wow.
I kind of got the feeling he felt he had some weight behind him in a certain area.
Some leverage. That's funny.
But so that's how it happened. It was quite a night.
That's unbelievable. Wow. That's a story that no one else has. I mean, oh my gosh, the last time, I don't really know that John ever sought anyone out, because Paul came to meet him at the Woolton Garden fete, and then Paul brought George to meet him. I don't think John ever sought anyone out. So this is
That's an interesting concept. I never thought of it that way, but I guess you're right.
Yeah, I mean, I know and it was George.
I'm flattered.
It's George and Paul who wanted Ringo in, because John felt like they were not treating Pete right, and he resisted until he found out that Cynthia was pregnant. And during all that, trying to get ready for the wedding and everything, he said, all right, fine, bring Ringo in, which was it ended up being a great thing. But he never consciously went out looking for anyone. So this is an amazing story. So he sits down and he tells you about this new LP that Yoko and he want to produce this sometime in New York City. What was his vision for the LP?
I think right from the get-go, it wasn't discussed that much that night. It was more, the concept was more brought out at the first couple of rehearsals.
Yeah.
They had a place down on, which coincidentally was on Bank Street also. It's called Butterfly Studios. I think Apple owns a lot of it, or at least they were leasing it. And it was back in the day, they had these, they still do. They have these mobile trucks. So they had a beautiful brand new mobile truck with a 24-track studio in it that backed into this really cool garage. And behind that big glass window, there was a studio that was draped in black burlap from head to toe. I mean, the ceiling, the walls, the floor. It was just the most elaborate soundproofed room I've ever seen or heard to this day, really. And so that's where we started rehearsing, and that we got right into it. Right from the get-go, he was explaining to us that he didn't want to take a lot of time like a lot of the Beatle records. He wanted to go in and do a record where you just did a song a day. You went in at 6:30, 7 o'clock at night. You heard the song. He knew we could do it because we were studio players. So you go in at 6:37. They've already got the drums down. By the way, Rick Frank was the drummer. I think we left his name out there earlier. Sorry. Rick Frank, rest in peace. The Elephant's Memory drummer, besides Jim Keltner, who was the Plastic Ono Band drummer, also joined us. So we went at 7 o'clock, and you learned the song, and by 7 the next morning, you had gone through a couple takes of the track, the vocals being overdubbed, the solos, if there were any, and by 7 the next morning, you basically had a finished record. So he was thinking about it like a newspaper. Mm-hmm. You go in, you attack the topic of the day, the song of the day, and you throw it out on the street, so to speak, at 7 the next morning, like a newspaper. It was really very cool. And
it was very creative.
You didn't have a lot of time to worry about anything because you were so darn busy trying to get your stuff together. It was quick. It was a quick process.
Yeah. Yeah, he loved that. He loved extemporaneous. He and Paul used to fight all the time he would say to Paul, you worry a thing to death. He wanted it to be, he thought rock and roll should be extemporaneous and hot off the press. And, that's what you're doing. So now Phil Spector was supposed to be involved in the recording sessions, right? And what happened with that?
That is correct. He had, been with John for a while there. Well, anyway, he was supposed to be on call in New York for the starting of the record. And he did show up. He was a couple hours late, but he came in and put his little stubby silver pearl-handled revolver on the board with a half an ounce of cocaine, and I guess that was his announcement that he had arrived. And I got to tell you, Jude, and he just hated us. I mean, it was so obvious from the get-go that he did not like us at all. He was looking down his nose at us. I think, he thought that John was a fool to not be with the A crowd anymore, so to speak, with, Klaus and Warman on bass and Eric and the crew, that they took to the Toronto Peace Festival. And but it got to be too jet-setty for him. He really was looking forward to getting together with a band that was a band. So Phil didn't like it, but John was into it. So the first night, the first song was Sunday, Bloody Sunday. Woo! And, what a tremendous way to hit it off. I mean, everybody was on all cylinders. We were excited to get going, and it's such an exciting song. And, Sunday Bloody Sunday had just happened a couple of weeks, matter of weeks before.
Yeah.
I think it was January 30th of that year. If I'm not mistaken, I'm not an expert on the dates and stuff, but so that was really a hot topic. Whereas Attica State that we did a couple of nights later was in the previous September, I believe, of 71.
Yeah.
So that one had been festering a while, but John just hated anything, that where there was oppression of any kind. I talked about him several times. We'd have just discussions, when we were tuning up and stuff. He'd always have his lyric sheet there and always making changes up until the last second, So he was really into those, the Irish stuff for sure, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And but Sunday Bloody Sunday was the first Irish topic that we took up, and just a great song, with the military, the English mock military drums in the beginning, and it put you in that mood. You could just feel the English marching down the streets of Dublin, actually it was Derry, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so anyway, that was a great way to start it off. It was in the key of B minor. Just had a kind of an awesome darkness to it, Tell Me the Truth is what that track is all about,
Yeah.
He didn't feel too good about the English on that one.
No.
Which is rightfully so,
Yeah,
it's terrible when 13 people killed and shot down in the streets. I mean, come on.
Yeah. And most of them were running away. They grabbed them by the hair and pulled them back and shot them, and they were not armed.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Just despicable.
Yeah, it was a horrible. It was totally a peaceful protest with mothers walking hand in hand with their children, old men in suits and ties, and to just open fire on them. The first para regiment, one para they called them, just opened fire on them and shot them down.
I guess John got his licks in, though. I mean, that's a song that's, it's for the forever. That'll be, and, he wrote that in those lyrics and pretty much set everybody straight on what happened. So that's, I felt good about that. I got to appreciate, both Lene and Jude, I got to appreciate the lyrics a lot more after I had made the record. Because you're just so busy just taking care of business, you just don't really have a chance to really, especially when he's writing them the night before. If you're hearing them for the first time, you don't have a lot to. I couldn't get too deep on it, until years later, probably.
Yeah.
But I'm proud to have played on that, and Luck of the Irish, as far as that goes. If we're sticking with the Irish stuff.
Yeah.
Luck of the Irish was just a great comment, and I had a lot of musical things about the Luck of the Irish that I was astounded by at the time. When I first heard it, I says, this is kind of corny. And then I got to listen to it more, and I realized that he was actually playing in a feel that's called a double jig. And it feels like 3/4, and a lot of people think it's in 3/4, but it's actually 6/8. In other words, it's like 1, 2, 3, 4. So the chords change every 6 beats.
Wow.
And, where a waltz would change every 3. I know I'm getting too technical here, but
now, what's that called again? A double what?
Jig. Irish jig.
Oh,
I call it a double jig because there's just a lot of jigs are just in 3/4. And so anyway, that was another tribute to the Elephants to be able to pick that up right off the bat. Not an easy field to play, if I can say so. And the key of G, I mean, and for Luck of the Irish, that was, there were I think John sang 38 Beatles songs in G, and I love every one of them.
Yeah.
I just love the way his voice sounds in G. It's just this, it's a guitar key because it involves a lot of the open strings of the guitar. So it's definitely a guitar key, and it's just very suitable for his voice. And it's just I thought it was a great job at the way he connected the Irish feel of the rhythm with the lyrics and the Irish thing. You know, I thought that was outstanding. Typical Beatle, you know, genius.
Yeah.
I mean, most people might write a song and look at the Irish in 4/4, you know. I mean, and it wouldn't make any difference. But to write it in an authentic feel of the Irish music, that's not everyone does.
That's brilliant.
It really is. Well, we'll just continue in the same vein. You know, if you don't mind telling us about some of the other songs, just kind of like you're doing. I'm going to let Lena take over here, and let's just go through some of them. So, Lena, take it away.
Great.
Okay, so in no particular order, I thought I would start with one of my favorites, and the one that Jude and I think should have been the opening song on the LP, because it plops the listener down in the center of the action politically and right in the heart of Manhattan. So tell us what, you know, just some of your random thoughts or any memory that you have of the song that you go to. And we'll start with the song, of course, New York City.
Good choice. New York City, I think we started with Sunday Bloody Sunday. I think Attica State wasn't far behind because that wasn't a real difficult field to play. But New York City, I think he really wanted to have us warmed up a few days before he went to New York City because he really wanted to rock out on that. And the night before, I think, I actually got a copy of the lyrics, and I don't know whether we had a day off or what happened. I can't remember. But when I saw that he had written in the second verse, you know, going down to Max's Kansas City with the Elephants Member Band, that's all I needed to hear. I mean, here we go. We are immortalized forever.
Yes.
I mean,
yes, you are.
I'm so
you know,
proud
did
of
they?
that.
Does he ever mention the Beatles in a Beatles lyric?
I don't believe in Beatles. That's the only time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys are so sharp on it. I would never even want to try to compete with you. You guys are Beatles geniuses.
That's a huge compliment. A huge compliment to you. And you know, I almost think, you know, I've read and it's a lot of things I read, and I don't know if they're actually, you know, bona fide truth, but I have read that he always wanted the Beatles to be more of a rocking band, like the Rolling Stones were.
Yep.
Instead of, you know, that clean cut, you know, the clean Beatles that they ended up being. And so you were the band he always wanted.
Yep.
Yeah, well, I have to say that guess who showed up at the record plant, you know, and they acted like they were young kids together, and was none other than Mick Jagger. And he was around for some of the work on New York City, and we really rocked hard because of the, you know, because we rocked. That's what we did. But having your name in the title of the in the lyrics, and it was just New York City was our thing. We owned it, and that was part of it too. You know, he had come to see us play at the Anderson Theater. You know, he had the Apollo Theater thing for Attica State that was in the Staten Island Ferry. They loved doing that. The stuff about David Peel, I have to get his name in there, was, you know, he met David before he met us and had played with him on the street and ended up producing an album for David. And then, of course, there was the Frank Zappa stuff from the Filmore East, which is the double record of the other record on our double record of Sometime in New York City. But that line about coming down to Max's City with the Elephants Member Band, that was it for me. You know, and another cool line besides that is, you know, the great line, I have to say, second that my favorite is the Statue of Liberty said, come. I mean, that's a heavy line.
Yep.
Absolutely.
For a lot of reasons.
Love it. Yep, I love it. Okay, so let's move on to another song that you cannot forget if you listen to it, even for just a few short bars, is John Sinclair. It's a bona fide earworm. Tell us who John Sinclair was and why this song was written for him, and we'd love to know if the song changed anything for Mr. Sinclair.
Well, that's good questions. John was a friend that we would meet on the road. He would occasionally come to New York, John Sinclair I'm talking about. And, we knew him, and he loved us, of course, because of our connection through the political things that were going on between him and Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman and this whole thing. John Sinclair was from Flint, Michigan, and he got busted for having 2 joints. This undercover girl comes along, this young, drug enforcement agent, and busted him for 2 joints in 1969. Wow. And it was just really a bummer to hear that kind of stuff. And he was actually the manager of, this might be, you guys aren't old enough to remember the MC5, are you?
God bless you for saying that.
I know how to do it.
You are good. You're so good.
Anyway, MC5, a Detroit band. He was managed by John Sinclair, so he was involved in the music business. And so they had this big rally. John went out to do this freedom rally for John to try to get him out of prison. And everybody showed up. Stevie Wonder and Bob Seger, Phil Oakes. I mean, it was a long list of people that showed up. And it was quite successful. But the government was looking at that as, because John Sinclair was trying to get a thing together called the White Panther Party, kind of the white version of the Black Panther Party, so to speak. But he really enjoyed working with Sinclair on the political stuff, and they had a good friendship. So, but as the result of this concert, I think it was only like the following week they let him out of jail.
Woohoo!
They realized that some of the marijuana laws they had there were just really unconstitutional, so he got off on that, and thank God. Yeah, I remember him coming to New York and partying with us for about a week. It kind of got out of hand. But anyway, he was a great guy and still is, John Sinclair, and I haven't heard from him in ages, but I think he's on Facebook and the whole deal, Wow. But later on, actually, it meant a lot, because later on, some of that stuff, even though they let him out, his case kind of still was around and made it all the way through to the Supreme Court, and I think they won his case in the Supreme Court for, it was like a surveillance kind of thing.
Yeah.
He was really responsible for. They had been watching him illegally and all this stuff. They found out. It was just a mess, but that's good stuff when they do that in the SupremeUrt.
Yeah.
They got to get that stuff together. So didn't help us in a lot of ways with the FCC. We didn't know something else, but that's another story. So anyway, John Sinclair's in the key of E, and I got to play with Jim Keltner on drums. Just Jim, not Mar drummer Rick Frank. Nothing against Rick, but Rick was really a percussionist. And one of the reasons that John brought in Jim was he had been playing with them forever in the Plastic Ono band. He really felt that he needed that nucleus of the strong low-end bass and Jim. And they let Rick do all the sweetening, and in other words, cymbal overdubs and castanets or whatever, cowbell, whatever.
Right.
So, but that worked out great. The only track I think that both Rick Frank and Jim played together on was Sunday Bloody Sunday when we first started out. I think that John felt he wanted to get both of them involved right off the bat. So there were 2 kits on that. And you can hear that pretty plainly. I think there's a ton of drums.
Yeah.
But on John Sinclair, it was just Jim and John and I. That's it. He sent everyone else home, and he was playing that dobro, and it was pretty challenging as any musician. Not so much for Jim, I think, because he had played with John a long time. But I was put in a position to, and that part of the song where it's going. You got to.
Yep.
The first time I heard that, I went, oh no. How many got-to-gattas are there going to be? Because you're not reading it, you're just feeling it,
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And so it was kind of like a telepathy thing, I think, is how I made that through that, or I was watching his body language or whatever. It was very hard to do, I've got to say, but I'm very happy with the way it turned out. And proud to have played with just the three of us on that. We were a trio for one night.
That's amazing. You had nerves of steel.
Yeah.
So that was a good one. I like that one as well. I think Attica State was actually a night before that, but like you said, we're not in any particular order.
Yeah.
Attica State was pretty uneventful for me. Another one in E. No real bass challenges in that, and just had to rock it out and do a nice shuffle thing for John and Yoko. Another politically though, I mean that was a horror story. 43 people being killed. I mean, just I know they were inmates and all, but that's souls, not good. Really? It woke a lot of people up, at that time.
Yeah,
it was pretty shocking.
I love that song too. All of them. I wish you had never brought up the got to part, because once you say that, like for 3 days now, I'll be got to seven. You just can't get it out of your head.
Talk about an earworm, huh?
It is. And Attica State, we're all mates with Attica State. I can't stop it when I hear it.
I appreciate all that. I'm loving it.
It's true.
Because I really do love the album. I really do. I had mixed feelings about a lot of the stuff that happened that year, about how it was the reaction to the record and stuff. But, after all this time, and not soon after, I realized I don't give a shit what they say. This record is strong, and still proud of it.
Yeah, it is great, and
I'm glad you guys like it too.
We both love it. I mean, really love it. And you kind of already touched on Luck of the Irish and Sunday Bloody Sunday, which are on the same theme, but they're really, really different. But when you and I were talking last week, we addressed the fact that one of the biggest criticisms about this album is Yoko's singing. And I think if you go back and listen to her singing now, I mean, maybe people did not like Yoko then. I mean, at that point, they were still very anti-Yoko. But if you go back and listen to it now, it's not that bad, is it?
Well, I think, like if you really honestly listen to Angela, the way they worked so hard, to sing so tightly together. And, there's no pitch problem. Yoko is singing, Okay, she did her screaming thing. I give everybody that, but this wasn't a case on, like, the song Angela or a lot of the stuff they did. John really worked with her, and they got together, and, of course, they were together all the time, so they had a lot of time to work on it. But I mean, all the time. They were never apart. I mean, it was just unbelievable to see. Anyway.
But, I think Jude
was one of my favorites. So, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sorry to butt in. Jude had mentioned in an article that she had recently written that she compared Yoko's singing to if Jude and I were singing in church, or at a concert. We're singing from the heart, and we're singing to make a statement. We're not in, professional choir or anything. And
of course, gotcha.
She compared that to that's how Yoko was performing. She was performing from her heart, which I definitely agree with Jude on that.
It must have been hard for her, being thrown into that. At that point, I mean, they were writing songs together, and she was writing more than people realized. Lyrics to Woman is the Nigger of the World, and, of course, we know later on, the word is that she wrote most of the lyrics to Imagine as well, or some of them. I can't Thinking we'll never know, but that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Couple of pretty cool songs there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's get down to Angela and Sisters Oh Sisters, which Lena, when I was working on that article that I'm doing for Beatle Fan, I'm doing this coming issue of Beatle Fan is going to be side 1 of Sometime in New York City. And then in the May-June issue is going to be side 2. And so we've been working together on it. And she coined the phrase, John and Yoko were awake before we were woke. And I really think
that's a good one.
Isn't it the truth? I mean, I just was like, wow, that is so good. Yeah. Because
I know I was asleep. they woke me up.
I'm telling you, I didn't even know about these things until I listened to this LP. And, you know, they were so fervent about women's rights. So tell us about the great opening track. Still, I think New York City should have opened the LP to put you in the right where you were supposed to be. But John loved Woman is the Nigger of the World so much that he put it first because he wanted people to hear it. So what do you remember about it?
Well, I think up until that point, actually, Luck of the Irish was the single that they chose. So that was slated to be the single, Luck of the Irish. And for him to back off on that and let the woman go forth says it all. He was really had to be crazy about it because he had it all arranged. You know, he had it at the beginning of the reel at the record plant. They were definitely doing Luck of the Irish.
Yeah.
Until we finished and he did the strings on Woman, and then I think that turned him around. It just came out so heavy and so good. He was sold. You know. Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that Luck of the Irish was probably the first choice. But I would have chose New York City, being a rocker. And I mentioned my name was in there. Yeah, that's why I chose it. I could be a little prejudiced, but anyway. But New York City it's gotten a lot of good things about it, and it gets a lot of play and blah, blah, blah. So I'm very happy with the way it worked out with New York City. Anyway.
Well, before I turn it back to Lena, I just want to say one thing on air so that everybody listening to this will know it, and that is that John approached several leading black groups such as the NAACP, before he released Woman is the Nigger of the World, and asked if that term would be offensive and if he should not put it in. And he was told on every occasion that they felt it was the perfect term to use to express how women were being treated, that they truly were treated like denigrated, the slave of the slave. And when the song came out and everybody vehemently objected to you guys singing, or to John singing it, objected to it being in the record, the leader of the Black Caucus in Congress stood up and said, there is nothing wrong with this song. It perfectly expresses what they were trying to say in their defense of women's rights. And Ebony magazine backed Elephant's Memory Band, Plastic Ono Elephant's Memory Band, and John and Yoko for the song. So this is much to do about nothing. The meaning was, as low as you can go, as bad as you can say about someone, as awful as you can denigrate someone, that's how women are being treated. So bravo, Elephant's Memory Band, and bravo, John and Yoko.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. I mean, boy, you go, girl.
All right, I'm shutting up. Go away.
You go. Goodness, nobody could have said it better than that. Still, and a lot of that stuff, and I've heard you say this before, that a lot of that stuff, all those topics are still around and happening today.
Yeah.
It's just as relevant now as it was then.
Yeah.
It's
going to be 50 years next year.
Wow. I know. I was just thinking they should re-release this. I mean, it's as current today as it was then. We're still dealing with the same crap, and it's unreal.
There you go. I love that word.
So Gary, I did want to ask. So the people were still wanting to hear Beatle John and this was not the Beatle John for sure. And I know John was really disappointed that the LP didn't do well because he had big plans for you guys. Tell us all about that, if you don't mind.
Well, his whole plan, besides doing Sometime in New York City record, right from the get-go, was to do a world tour. I mean, we talked about it almost every day at every rehearsal. He went to a famous music store on 48th Street in Manhattan called Manny's and basically opened a carte blanche tab. So I ran down and ordered every bass amp known to man and had them delivered to the studio. And I think we all did that. We just went crazy. I mean, it was like Christmas every day. I mean, you just go. They had a new amp come in down there. I got to have it, and I'd have the roadies run down and buy it and bring it to. And I would just line them up all in a row and just just play them all at once and just go from one to the other. It was like Christmas morning is the best way to describe it. But he was really intent on doing a world tour, and he was scouting agents, and I think William Morris was trying to get a hold of him for that famous booking agency in Manhattan, and everything we did, including the Garden show, that was in the end of August. He just considered that a practice. Just a practice day for the tour.
Wow.
So why aren't we going out all this time, you ask? Is because he couldn't get that damn green card. He just couldn't get it. We think we had it solved, and he thought he had it solved, and he'd come in all deflated, at the next rehearsal that it just fell through again, and then we wouldn't see him. He'd get depressed, and we wouldn't see them at all for a week, and we'd think it was something we did. And it turns out they're in Houston looking for Yoko's daughter, who was like on the run at that point with Tony Cox, her first husband or second husband. But anyway, so it was kind of a weird time to have to go week to week. We thought this will be it. Well, here he's got the card, and we're out of here in a month. It wouldn't take us long because we had the sets down and we knew exactly what we were going to do. And so that's what you hear at the Garden concert is basically what you would have heard on the world tour. We would have come out and, played that set, more or less. We talked him into doing Come Together at the show. It was the only Beatles song he would play. We wanted to do all kinds of Beatles stuff. And he did all the solo and the singles, like the solo stuff, like Cold Turkey and that kind of stuff. He was into that, which he should have been. But the only Beatles song he relented on was "Come Together," and for me personally, that was the best one because that's such a great bass line Paul played. It was great covering that, and what a pleasure! No bass player would say that was a hard order to fulfill is to play that line for sure.
That's awesome.
So that's the way it worked out with the Beatles stuff. Paul was having a lot of trouble, with he wanted to do his own stuff too. He wasn't really excited about doing Beatles songs, I think, when he first was going out. So they wanted to do their own thing. They didn't. Enough of the Beatles thing for now. We're talking 1971 here. I mean, you can understand it. It's only a matter of months since they packed it in. So
so you did get to do some other things. You mentioned the Garden concert, and you were also on the Mike Douglas show, which was the hot show of the day. Tell us about that.
Oh, cornball Mike Douglas. What a trip he was.
His ascot and little scarf.
Let me look forward to that 4:00 show in the afternoon. I'd love to do that every day and listen to Mike Douglas come out and sing an oldie but moldy. He was a trip. I got to tell you that. It was actually early in the year. It was Valentine's Day. We had only been with John a couple of weeks, and we got the call that we're doing Mike Douglas for a week yet. We didn't even have it, so we didn't know what that was going to be. But we got limoed down to Philadelphia for it. And I remember when we went down, John was in a white limo and we were in a black one. And we pulled in first, and there was like a big crowd of like giggly, groupie people. They're Beatle fans, and we opened the door to the black limo, and they looked in and saw the elephants and screamed, "Oh my God, what's that?" And quickly ran back to the white limo where they figured out that John and Yoko would be. So it was a great way to start out. It really makes you feel good when you show up to the gig.
What is that?
But so we're standing in the wings, gals, and we're the first day on the show. And John and I are standing in the wings, and Mike Douglas had a big band, like a 12-piece band. They were great studio musicians from Philly, played live in the studio, and Mike would come out and sing a song every day. So just to kick off the show. And so we're standing there, and the band starts up, and all of a sudden we hear Mike Douglas singing Michelle.
Oh, Lord.
And I thought John was going to hit the ceiling. I mean, he was so pissed. He looked at me and went, "Friggin' hell!" I mean, he was not happy. It was quite a moment I'll never forget. Couldn't have done a little bit more research, on the show there. To figure out that. I mean, John wrote the middle eight, but the point is that it was considered a Paul song.
Yeah.
That was insulting.
Gosh, they're definitely out of touch there. They definitely.
God bless Mike Douglas. We did Shanae, we did the Dick Cavett show after that. And if we're
he was a little more hip.
Stuff. Yeah. The problem there being that poor Dick Cavett had to come out and do a disclaimer at the beginning of the show about that we were going to do the song "Woman" and "Is the Nigger," and it was just amazing. He had to stand there and read off a script for like 5 minutes. ABC made him do that before we were allowed to do that song on the show. I mean, it was just how absurd, But that kind of stuff isn't surprising, even in this day and age. I mean, it only took, I think it was, the song was banned in a couple of weeks by the FCC. So, hello. Somehow the FCC didn't get the memo from Supreme Court or whatever. It was tough. Nixon was still president.
Yeah. But it just still people won't even say the word, and they don't. And yet last night I was listening to on Alexa to the top hits, the today's hits station, and it was in every single song for the 20 minutes that I was up there. But don't let John Lennon say it. If you let John Lennon say it, then that's a different thing. Like the Beatles a million times prior to John's date book thing had said that they were agnostics or atheists, and never once did they get in trouble. But let John Lennon say it. And, I'm sorry. I'm back on the soapbox again. So.
It really hurt John. It really did. I don't think he saw it coming that bad, but the way they panned the record and the banning of the single, and he should have stuck to Luck to the Irish, I guess, Luck of the Irish, because at least that wouldn't have got banned. But I don't know whether that would have.
The BBC banned it. They totally banned it, and they banned.
Oh well,
big time.
Of course, of course. But I don't know whether that would have gotten the same reaction here. I won't know. I don't know. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Well, another exciting performance that you guys were able to take part in is the one-to-one concert that was hosted by Geraldo Rivera. Can you recall any great moments from that night?
Well, besides playing the bass line to come together, which is a pretty big thrill.
Yeah, man.
I remember I was extremely shocked when I realized that they had given out 25,000 tambourines.
Woo!
In the audience.
Oh, my.
And you think one tambourine is loud. 25,000 of them. And that people wonder to this day why that concert was so loud. We had to be loud. You get covered up for all the tambourines. Everybody had a tambourine. It was just unbelievable. I've never had to deal with anything like that. Thank God that the Madison Square Garden stage is set back. You're like 30 feet back from the front row, and couldn't see half the people in the audience anyway because of all the TV crews going up on the dollies back and forth. ABC was filming it, and there was a private company from that studio I mentioned earlier, Butterfly. They had a camera shoot there, and so it was quite the day. John gave us I remember John slipped me, all of us, $1,000 each just to get something to wear for that day.
Wow.
And in 1972, I'm going, do you mean for the show or for all year? I didn't, $1,000, it's ridiculous. So when we realized how serious he was and how he really meant it to be stuff we would wear on the tour, I finally figured out what he was talking about. So we all went to custom clothes makers, and I remember I had a satin suit made. And spent every nickel of that $1,000. I still have it hanging in my closet today.
Wow.
And it was a place called Jenny Waterbags down in the village. It was just an unbelievable, they would everything was tailored. They didn't have any rack stuff. You went there to have something made for yourself, personally tailored. So that was exciting. We got held up at they put us up at the beautiful hotel across the street, so we didn't even have to go home during the day or whatever. A lot of stuff like that. They were great. When we practiced at the Filmore East, the old theater, every day for 2 weeks before that garden show, the 1-to-1. And John was pretty much a slave driver. We ran the set twice a day for 2 weeks. Come hell or high water. It was. And made a lot of changes, and I think it really built up his confidence. I think he needed it, and it didn't hurt us any either. But even to the last minute, if you listen to some of his comments through the show, excuse me, he's making comments about the arrangements, because we were still changing arrangements even till the day of the garden, because he didn't care. We're still trying out stuff for the world tour. A lot of people didn't get that.
Right.
But he really felt that day was a rehearsal. He was not, and that took a lot of the pressure off of him. And, he wasn't really thinking about that it's going to be a VHS or, because he thought we were eventually going to do the tour.
Yeah.
And he thought it was going to happen by the fall. Unfortunately, he couldn't get that darn green card. So.
Well, isn't that the 1-to-1 concert? Isn't that the one where he had 2 of everything, 2 drums?
Exactly.
Tell everybody about that.
Well, and to start out, Jim Keltner had joined us from the Plastic Ono band. Joined our Elephant's Memory drummer, so we had 2 drummers, and it was Wayne Tex Gabriel on guitar, and John would be the second guitar. We had Adam Ippolito on keys, and of course, Yoko was playing piano, so that's 2 keyboard players. So, the only thing that he didn't double was Stan Bronstein, the single sax, but he was such a soloist that made sense even regardless. But he came to me and said, "Listen, we have 2 of everything in the rhythm section, so I'd like to have 2 bass players." And I'm thinking of asking Noel Redding from Jimi Hendrix's band. And my heart just sank. Excuse me, because I just figured, what the hell? Nobody knows me, and nobody's ever going to know me if I don't get some kind of billing on this thing. Noel Redding's going to get all the attention. And rightfully so. So I was bummed for a couple of days until I found out that he turned it down, and then I was excited again. It was just a big deal, I figured if I'm going to play the garden, I really want to be the top honcho in this rhythm section. So they said you still want to have 2 bass players, so I suggested that they call their old bass player, who I had left the band just the year before, and had been with them through the whole beginning of the band from 1967 on up to when I joined in 71. So I just recommended that they call him and have him be the second bass player, and it worked out great. He came down from Maine, The girls in Maine, he was in a commune up there at the time, and all the girls in the commune made him this amazing robe, this Jesus robe that was all handmade and stuff. So he's the guy at the garden in the Jesus robe.
I love it.
The second bass player. I'm in the $1,000 suit.
And both of you were walking on water. I'm telling you.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
It was a great, and Gary, just so you know, anybody that listens to Sunday Bloody Sunday knows that you will be remembered forever. I don't even know what you're talking about, but you are an amazing bass player, and I'm not so much generally into bass players, but you rocked that album, rocked it. And I know that John appreciated everything that you contributed to it, because that's what he was looking for, was that hard backbeat, and you certainly supplied it. So don't think.
I'm pretty happy with the way that came out. Thank you again.
Yeah.
I can get used to all these compliments. So keep them coming.
Well, we got to talk about something kind of sad. Is really how, in the end, how did the Plastic Ono Elephants Memory Band part ways?
Well, not to get into too much of the nitty-gritty, about John and Yoko's relationship, but let's put it this way, that John had some indiscretions one night, and it was after the election, and when Nixon took the White House back. And we had this party at Jerry Rubin's house, and John was not the best of a drinker a lot of times, and could get pretty out there, and did that night, and had some transgressions with a young lady there, and that's pretty much historical, I think. And Yoko kicked him out of the house, so that's how he ended up in L.A. And by the time, I thought things were a little weird for a few weeks, but it was Christmas time, so I didn't think a lot about it. Didn't figure we would be doing heavy rehearsals through that time anyway. And we had already pretty much finished approximately Infinite Universe double album for Yoko. And so it was an interesting time for them. So I got this letter a while later, quite a few months later, and it was after John had went out to L.A. and all the craziness had started out there. And so we were keeping tabs, but we thought he would be back soon. You just didn't know, It's easy to look back now and see what happened, but when it was the time, we were still on retainer from Apple. We were still getting our checks every week for months and months. So we figured, hey, we're still on retainer. He still might get this green card thing together, and we'll still go out.
Yeah.
But it just never happened. And I got this beautiful letter from John. It was just so touching. I wish I would have remembered to. I'm going to have to paraphrase because I have it framed, and I forgot to bring it into my studio here I was actually going to read it word for word, but I'm sure we're short on time, so I'll just give you a few tidbits. It was just basically to each of us a letter saying that he didn't think that he had to deal with all this stuff with Apple any day. He was going to get the final solution. He referred to it as with I didn't know what we should do with the equipment because the tour's not looking good right now. Should either he's going to have to cover it, or Apple's going to come for it, or something like that's going to happen. So, and he was concerned about that because he knew we were making our living off of that gear at that point. If somebody yanked our gear out from under us, we wouldn't have been able to work.
Right.
Because we had discarded all of our old stuff for all the new stuff. So,
yeah.
Which was all, stenciled cases, road cases with Apple Records and Elephant's Memory Plastic Ono Band on them and all that stuff. We were ready. And we were actually going out and doing it. I think I told you this, Jude, in November of that same year. We went out to L.A. and recorded a couple tracks for Yoko's album and did this huge concert at L.A. Coliseum for K-Rock.
Mm-hmm.
And John and Yoko called in on the PA system and introduced us. I thought that was so nice
wow.
of them because they didn't even tell us they were going to do it. You know, like Keith Moon was the MC. He came out in drag for the concert, and he announced us and surprised us that John, you know, everybody simmered down. We're going to hear John and Yoko on the loudspeakers, and they did this like 1 minute introduction of the band. That was really great of them.
That's cool.
They couldn't be there to do the set from the tour, but they were, you know, wanted everybody to know who we were and gave us a nice cordial introduction. It was great.
Wow. So, but what happened to your equipment? Did they come for it, or did you get to keep it?
Well, I realized, you know, God bless Stan Bronstein and Rick Frank. They were the originators of the band. But as the days and months went by, somehow I became more of the take charge guy. I don't know why that happened, and I'm surprised even now that I did that. But when I heard that, I went to John Eastman. I made an appointment with John Eastman, Linda's brother, who was handling a lot of the Apple stuff at the time. So I went right to his office and went in and said, listen, we haven't been paid for any of the records. We're getting, and I was getting flack from 802, the union, about, you know, where are the, you know, what's going on? You know, you guys, why aren't you getting any checks for it? Where's Apple with the money? They're supposed to pay, you know, they pay percentage on those session fees and stuff. The union gets a small cut. So it was a problem. So I said, you know what? Let's forget about all the stuff that you owe on the records, and we'll keep the equipment.
Good for you. Good for you.
I mean, you know, you got to fight for it, you know?
Yeah, and, you know, John wasn't really in charge of things like that because so much was handled by the corporation. And I'll give you another example. When he was assassinated in 1980, Mimi found out that her house in Poole was not owned by her. She thought she owned it, but it was owned by Apple. And so, she was scared to death that she was going to get kicked out of her house. But she kind of did the same thing you did and went and sat down and said, look, you know, I thought this was my house. It's been my house for years. So good for you for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, you had to stick up for yourself. I mean, we were too nice to let it go, you know. I mean, if it had been any other artist, we would have went to 802 the very following week and went to the window, and I'd like my checks for so-and-so sessions now. I mean, it was a lot of money in those days. You look, but because we were on retainer, you know, from Apple, that we felt like we really couldn't shake the tree too much.
Yeah.
But when it came down, you're going to lose the gear, and you know, we kind of got John out of a pickle too, because you know, I pulled that little stunt, and John didn't have to get involved in that. You know,
right?
At least he was nice enough to give us a heads up, you know, on what probably will go down. But anyway, back to the letter. You know, he didn't think that us parting ways would hurt either one of our careers. I'm quoting him now. You can't keep a good band down. No. An elephant's memory is long but fast.
Oh.
He was so witty. And so and it was just a great letter, very warm letter with his little stamp on it, with his wax stamp and his signature, and it was very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so what I'm getting ready to say has absolutely nothing to do with me, because I don't get any kickback from any of this stuff or a single penny or anything. But I wish that everybody listening would take part in the things that are getting ready to come up in the next month and would get out their 8-track or their album or their CD or just stream sometime in New York City and give it a second listen. And we've got some things coming up that might be helpful. Number one, there's an article I mentioned coming out in Beatle Fan Magazine going track by track through sometime in New York City. First part should be out any day now. Second part coming up in May, June, and with some history and some background and everything that will help people appreciate what was going on in this amazing, amazing LP. And then there's going to be the feature article about you in Culture Sonar, which will be out next month with this interview attached to it so that people can hear you telling the story of how this came to be. It is time to give Sometime in New York City another listen. It is an unafraid, unabashed album that stands up courageously for good in the world and for kindness in the world and for freedom. And Gary, I know that you're really proud of being such an integral part of it. And Lena and I thank you from our hearts for being here tonight to bring the LP to life.
Oh, are you kidding? You guys have been great. I can't wait to try some of those recipes from the 60s cookbook.
Heck yeah.
Looking forward to that, Lena.
Well, we are just very, very honored to have had the opportunity to listen to all of your stories, Gary. It's just so refreshing, and I think people are going to really enjoy hearing what you have to say about everything on the album. Plus, I do hope that people will take Jude's recommendation and listen to that album. I had never really listened to it seriously until Jude asked me to a couple of months ago, maybe.
Were you 7 years old
and,
then?
Well, maybe. But I enjoyed listening to it so much.
And thanks to all the listeners. Thanks. Really appreciate it.
It's just fantastic. And so I hope everyone will take an evening and jam out with it. It's awesome. It's just such an awesome
thanks for that.
movie. Awesome album. So Gary, how can people follow you on social media, and if you have any other formats that you like to
thanks for that.
Connect with fans?
I have a fan page on Facebook, Gary Van Scyoc fan page. I do a lot of posting on there and kind of keeping up with a lot of things, and that's my main thing. But I do have a website, actually. Remember websites?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Gary Van Scyoc.
I had one of those.
You know, I've got a store on there, so I got to mention it because I sold the Elephant's Memory T-shirts and my latest record, which is called Pop Goes the Elephant.
Woo!
My wife Eva and I are on the cover, and I'm selling that on there, and some Elephant's Memory buttons. And there's a lot of interesting videos and typical website stuff, but it's pretty cool. I'm pretty proud of the website. It's held up. I've had it pretty much unchanged for almost a decade. So
what's the name of
it?
What's your website?
Job.
What is your website handle?
www.GaryVanScyoc.com.
Great. Well, we really do thank you for the stories that you've shared tonight, and more importantly, for being a doer of good in the world, not just a talker. So to Eva, your sweet, sweet wife, we send hugs and love. And Gary, thank you for being our hashtag eye candy selection for 2021 on She Said, She Said. You rock, man.
My pleasure. Anytime, guys. Thank you so much. You guys have a wonderful evening now, all right?
You too.
All right, we will.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Good
night.
night.
Nice to meet you again. Thank you.
Bye-bye. So that winds up another amazing show here on She Said, She Said. In just a few weeks, we're going to kick off another fun theme for this year. Last year, our theme was the Beatles family, and Jude and I were so blessed to be able to interview Rogue Best, Angie and Ruth McCartney, Chaz Newby, and John's sister, Julia Baird. Such great, great memories. If you missed these landmark podcasts, you can hear them all on the She Said show page on Podbean, iTunes, or Spotify, or on the link on our She Said Facebook page. So this year, our 2021 theme will be the psychedelic Beatles, and we're going to talk to some of the people who shared the crazy era with the lads between 1966 and 1968, probably minus the LSD. And we promise to get the scoop on that very colorful time in their careers. So please join us by following our She Said Facebook page, where you'll be able to find out easily what we have in store for you in the exciting months ahead. Until then, here's to food for thought, food for the soul, and food for the love of rock and roll.
Ta-ra and shine on.